So Sylvester Stallone recently had to deal with something no parent should ever have to say out loud. 3 fake HOA enforcers showed up on his doorstep trying to take his daughter Sophia away. And the reason? A supposed violation of residential minor compliance. His neighbor, Mrs. Harrington, stood across the street grinning like she'd just done the Lord's work. Funny thing is, the only thing that got taken away that morning were the enforcers themselves, hauled off in an ambulance. Let's rewind a little. Before we dive in, Stallone wasn't expecting trouble when he poured his first cup of black coffee on a quiet Thursday morning. Pacific Palisades was still wrapped in its early mist, the kind of calm you only get before gardeners start their leaf blowers and retirees begin their morning strolls. He had just settled into his porch chair, a newspaper folded neatly under one arm, when there came a knock. 3 sharp, heavy thuds. Not the kind of knock you answer barefoot, but the kind that makes you wonder if you should have kept the Louisville Slugger by the door instead of the umbrella stand. Sylvester rose slowly, instincts sharpened by years, both inside and outside Hollywood. When he opened the door, he found 3 men standing on the front step. Not delivery drivers, not city inspectors. These men wore black tactical vests, cargo pants, and mirrored sunglasses despite the overcast sky. They weren't police either. Something about them was off, too stiff, too rehearsed. The leader, a thick-set man with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he practiced intimidation in the mirror, stepped forward. "Mr. Stallone," he said, voice clipped, "we're here for a scheduled compliance review under Willow Ridge HOA Regulation, Section 14B. Stallone stared at him without blinking. He didn't recognize these men, didn't recognize their tone, and sure as hell didn't recognize any regulation that gave HOA enforcers the right to show up at his door like bounty hunters. The clipboard guy continued without missing a beat. "We've received behavioral concerns about your minor resident. We are authorized to perform an on-site welfare evaluation. Immediate access is mandatory under Article 7.3. The words came out cold, bureaucratic, as if reciting them made them true. Behind them, across the street, Mrs. Harrington sipped from a massive stainless steel tumbler, her tennis outfit far too cheerful for the chill in the air. She didn't blink. She just smiled wider and mouthed, "It's for the best." Stallone stepped onto the porch, letting the heavy door swing closed behind him, positioning himself between these fake agents and his home. He folded his arms loosely across his chest, studying them the way he used to size up opponents in the ring, finding the weaknesses, measuring the distance. "You just said a lot of words," he said calmly, "but none of them make a damn bit of legal sense." The leader didn't flinch. "Non-cooperation will be documented," he said, flipping to another page on his clipboard. Stallone noticed the second man, shorter but stocky, tightening his stance. The third man, a twitchy kid, barely old enough to shave, kept glancing past Stallone's shoulder, like he was trying to spot Sophia. It was clear they weren't here for a compliance check. They were here for his daughter. Stallone's stance shifted subtly. Feet planted shoulder-width apart, hands loose by his sides. In a younger man, it might have looked casual. In Stallone, it looked like a storm about to break. The leader caught the shift, hesitated, then pressed forward. "Are you refusing inspection?" Sylvester smiled, slow and cold. "I'm refusing whatever game you're playing." A long beat of silence stretched across the porch. Mrs. Harrington filmed discreetly with her phone from her driveway. A couple of neighbors peeked through their curtains but didn't intervene. They never did. The clipboard man straightened up, signaling the others to withdraw. "We will escalate to phase 2, he said flatly. They walked back to a black, unmarked SUV, parked a few houses down. Its windows so dark it looked like it swallowed light. The SUV rumbled quietly and rolled away, leaving a faint trail of exhaust and an even heavier cloud of tension. Sophia stood at the top of the stairs inside, her textbooks clutched to her chest, eyes wide. Stallone stepped back into the house, locking the door behind him. "Dad, what was that?" she asked. He didn't lie. "Trouble," he said, and he knew, deep in his gut, that it was only just beginning. 2 hours later, a second notice appeared duct-taped to their mailbox. Not mailed, not handed over. Duct-taped like a threat. Sophia found it first, staring at it like it might explode. Stallone peeled it off and read, "Violation. Visual disruption. Unauthorized minor activity. Fine. $250. Persistent non-compliance may trigger monitoring review under Section 7.3. His hands crumpled the paper unconsciously. It wasn't about a bike left on the lawn or an unsightly hedge. It was about creating a paper trail, a justification for whatever came next. At lunch, Sophia barely touched her grilled cheese sandwich. She pushed the plate around, glancing toward the window every few seconds. "I didn't do anything wrong," she muttered. "You don't have to," Stallone said gently. "Sometimes the system just needs a target." His phone buzzed. It was Tommy DeSantis, an old friend from his early days in New York. Tommy now ran security investigations out of Redondo Beach. Stallone answered. After a few quick sentences, his stomach dropped. "Buddy, whoever came to your door isn't HOA. They're subcontracted through a dummy shell out of Vegas. Neighborhood Integrity Solutions. Real low-grade operation. But they've got heavy backing. They're running pilot programs, targeting single-family households, especially high-profile ones." "Pilot programs for what?" Stallone asked, already knowing the answer. "Custody interventions," Tommy said. "Sophia's name is on a list, Sly, and so's yours." That night, Stallone didn't sleep. He sat in the living room with the lights off, the faint hum of the Pacific Ocean drifting through the cracked window, one hand resting lightly on the baseball bat that leaned against the arm of his chair. He wasn't scared. He was preparing, because he knew they would come again. And this time, he wouldn't wait on the porch. Stallone didn't have to wait long. Just after midnight, the black SUV rolled back into the neighborhood, headlights off, tires whispering over the asphalt. From his seat in the living room, he watched through the narrow slit between the curtains. 3 figures slipped out, dressed in the same tactical vests, moving low across the lawn like they thought darkness made them invisible. They didn't realize Stallone had seen men who actually knew how to disappear in the dark. And these guys weren't it. He waited, silent, motionless, a stone carved into the shadow of his own home. The first man approached the front porch, a crowbar glinting in his hand as he reached for the lock. Stallone moved then, smooth and fast, like a current pulling under the surface. The door flew open before the man could react, and Stallone grabbed him by the vest, yanked him forward, and slammed him into the wooden column of the porch with enough force to crack the wood. The man let out a sharp grunt and dropped to his knees. The second man rushed forward, drawing a stun baton from his belt. Stallone sidestepped, caught the man's wrist mid-swing, twisted it sharply until there was a satisfying pop, and the baton clattered harmlessly to the ground. The third man, younger, faster, tried to retreat toward the SUV, but Stallone moved like a predator who'd already chosen his target. 2 long strides, and he was there, grabbing the man by the hoodie and dragging him back, slamming him flat on the grass. Sophia, standing behind the front window, pressed her hands to the glass, eyes wide, frozen. Stallone glanced at her, gave a short nod to reassure her, then focused back on the broken heap of would-be enforcers scattered across his lawn. He crouched beside the leader, grabbing the man's jaw in one strong hand and forcing him to meet his gaze. "Who sent you?" he growled, voice low, dangerous. The man said nothing, his face twisted in pain and defiance. Stallone tightened his grip until the man gasped. "You don't want me to ask again?" he warned. The man's lips trembled, but he stayed silent. Across the street, Mrs. Harrington stood once more in her driveway, robe wrapped tightly around her, phone raised high, filming again, always filming. Stallone released the man's jaw with a shove and stood surveying the scene. Sirens sounded in the distance. Someone had finally called the police. Probably Harrington herself, pretending to be a concerned citizen. Stallone didn't move to run. He didn't have to. He had nothing to hide. The LAPD cruiser pulled up with lights flashing but no siren. 2 officers stepped out cautiously, hands near their belts. One approached Stallone, eyes darting between him and the groaning men on the ground. "Sir, we received a call about an assault in progress," he said carefully. Stallone crossed his arms over his chest, calm as a statue. "They broke into my property," he said. "They tried to abduct my daughter." The officer hesitated, looking at the 3 injured men, then back at Stallone. "You have any proof of that?" Stallone pointed toward the security cameras he'd installed, just hours earlier, now blinking silently from the eaves. "It's all recorded," he said. The officer nodded slowly, signaling his partner to check the SUV. The younger cop approached the vehicle, peered inside, and stiffened. Moments later, he pulled out a duffel bag filled with zip ties, a syringe, and what looked suspiciously like sedatives. The mood shifted immediately. Sophia stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a thick sweater, her face pale but composed. She looked at the officers, then at her father, and said clearly, "They said they were from the HOA. They tried to get in. Dad stopped them." Her voice didn't waver. The officers exchanged a look, then the lead cop radioed for backup and an evidence tech. Stallone watched him carefully, saw the moment professionalism overrode skepticism. Good. He needed the system to work, at least for now. As the officers handcuffed the 3 men and loaded them into the cruiser, Stallone felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. They were coming after Sophia, and after him, and Harrington. She wasn't the boss. She was just a cog in a machine that had already decided they were threats. After the police left, Stallone and Sophia sat in the kitchen, the old oak table between them. The clock ticked loudly in the silence. Finally, Sophia spoke. "Why us?" she asked. Stallone stared at the wood grain for a long moment before answering. "Because we don't fit into the neat little box they want," he said. "Because we're strong. And because someone thinks strong is dangerous." Sophia nodded slowly, processing. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She didn't need fairy tales. She needed truth. Stallone rose and went to the safe hidden behind the pantry. From it, He pulled a manila envelope, one he kept for moments when the world turned hostile again. Inside was a file Tommy had sent him a few weeks back, when the first strange citations started arriving. He slid it across the table to Sophia. She opened it and scanned the contents, her eyes growing wider with every page. Lists of flagged households, profiles of at-risk minors, sophisticated behavioral risk scores compiled without consent. Sophia found her own name halfway down the first page. Behavioral volatility, moderate. Parental resistance to intervention, high. She looked up at him, her face a mixture of fear and fury. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about you." Stallone nodded. "They see me as a problem they need to fix or remove." Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she pushed the file away. "So what do we do?" she asked. Stallone leaned forward, his eyes hard as iron. "We fight smarter than they do," he said. "We gather evidence, we expose them, and we protect each other." Sophia took a deep breath, then another. Finally, she met his gaze. "I'm with you," she said. Stallone smiled grimly. "I know." The next morning, Stallone drove across town to meet Tommy at a diner tucked off the Pacific Coast Highway, a place where surfers and bikers nursed bottomless coffees at chipped formica tables. Tommy slid into the booth opposite him, dropping a thumb drive onto the table between them. "Everything I could pull," he said. "They're operating under the Neighborhood Resilience Initiative now. Same faces, different name. And get this, they're backed by a think tank out of D.C. called Civic Future Strategies. It's not just local anymore, Sly. It's federal." Stallone pocketed the drive, without a word. Tommy leaned in closer. "They've flagged Sophia for Phase 2 intervention. They're planning another extraction. Official this time. Cops involved. Paper trail. Judges bought and paid for." Stallone's jaw tightened until his molars ached. "When?" he asked. Tommy glanced around the diner, lowered his voice. 3 days. They're moving fast." Stallone exhaled slowly, tamping down the old, familiar surge of adrenaline. He had 3 days to prepare. 3 days to outthink a system designed to crush resistance before it could even organize a defense. He stood, tossed a few bills on the table, and clapped Tommy on the shoulder. "Thanks, brother," he said. Tommy just nodded. "Watch your six," he warned. Stallone drove home along the winding coastal highway, the ocean on his left, endless and cold, the cliffs rising sharp and unyielding on his right. The sun was climbing higher now, burning away the last of the morning fog. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Let them come. He wasn't going anywhere. Back at home, Stallone wasted no time. He fortified the house, installed secondary locks, reinforced the back entrances, moved cameras inside as well as out. Sophia helped him, focused and determined, no longer the wide-eyed teenager, but a young woman bracing for a siege. He contacted a lawyer he trusted, an old-school fighter named Rick Montrose, who had once gone toe-to-toe with corrupt city boards and lived to tell about it. Montrose came over the same afternoon, reviewed the citations, the notices, the false compliance orders, and shook his head grimly. "This isn't just harassment, Sly. They're building a file. They want to prove you're unstable, negligent, dangerous. They get one judge to sign off, and they can take Sophia under emergency custody for safety evaluation." Stallone sat back, his fists clenched. "What do we do?" he asked. Montrose leaned forward, voice low. "You get ahead of it. We file a preemptive restraining order against the HOA enforcement unit. We submit the evidence to the sheriff's office. And we make noise, Big noise, media noise. They operate in the shadows because no one's looking. You shine a light. They scatter. Stallone nodded. Do it, he said. Montrose smiled grimly. Already started. The next day, the battle lines became even clearer. A new notice arrived, not taped to the mailbox this time, but slid under the front door. No official header, no HOA logo, just a single line typed in bold font. Final notice. Compliance required. Extraction scheduled. Sophia found it first. She handed it to Stallone without a word, her face pale. He read it once, crumpled it in his fist, and tossed it into the fireplace without hesitation. That evening, they sat around the kitchen table again, the heavy weight of inevitability pressing down on the house like a storm gathering over the Pacific. Sophia spoke first. They're coming, aren't they? Stallone looked at her, seeing not the little girl who used to ride a pink bike up and down the street, but a fighter born from necessity. Yeah, he said. They're coming. She swallowed hard, squared her shoulders. Then we make them wish they hadn't. The attack came just before dawn 2 days later. It was quiet at first, the soft crunch of tires on gravel, the barely audible murmur of voices coordinating in the dark. Stallone was already awake, sitting in the living room, in jeans and a black sweatshirt, boots laced, mind clear. He saw the shadows move past the front windows. 3 vehicles this time, not just one. They were escalating. A knock, sharp and demanding, rattled the door. Stallone didn't move. Another knock. Then a voice, amplified by a portable loudspeaker. Mr. Stallone, this is the Willow Ridge Community Enforcement Unit. Please open the door. Compliance inspection authorized under Municipal Code 41.2. Stallone smiled grimly. Municipal Code 41.2 didn't exist. He rose slowly and motioned for Sophia to stay back in the hallway, out of sight. The door shook under the force of another impact. Last warning, the voice barked. Open the door, or we breach. Stallone waited until the door cracked slightly under a third blow, then moved with the precision of a man who had choreographed more fights than most men had lived through. As the first agent forced his way inside, Stallone grabbed him by the collar and yanked him off balance, using his momentum against him. The man slammed face first into the tile floor, unconscious before he even hit the ground. The second agent surged forward, baton raised high. Stallone ducked, drove a brutal punch into the man's kidney, then an uppercut that lifted him off his feet and sent him crashing into the foyer table. The third agent hesitated, the brief flicker of fear crossing his face, but duty outweighed fear. He charged. Stallone sidestepped, grabbed the man's outstretched arm, and with a swift, practiced motion, dislocated the shoulder, sending the agent sprawling with a scream. Another figure appeared at the door. A supervisor, judging by the clipboard he held like a badge of honor. He barked orders into a headset, ordering more men forward. Stallone knew he couldn't hold the house forever. He needed to end this fast. Sophia, watching from the hallway, caught his eye. No words needed. She understood. She moved to the kitchen, grabbed her phone, and sent out the pre-drafted email blast Montrose had prepared. Video clips, legal notices, evidence packages, to every major news outlet, to every sympathetic reporter they could find. Within minutes, phones across the city buzzed with headlines. Hollywood legend targeted by rogue enforcement unit. Sirens wailed again in the distance, real ones this time. LAPD this time. Someone had tipped them off. The next wave hit harder. 4 more men crashed through the back door, yelling, armed with tasers and zip ties. Stallone met them head-on. He wasn't just defending a home. He was defending his blood, his family, his very right to exist free of fear. He dropped the first man with a brutal knee to the chest, elbowed the second across the bridge of the nose, leaving him gurgling. The third tried to tackle him, but Stallone pivoted, grabbed the man's momentum, and hurled him into the kitchen counter with a crunch. The last one hesitated, fear playing on his face, then threw down his weapon and ran for the front door. Stallone let him go. LAPD cruisers roared up the street, tires screeching. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. For one terrible second, Stallone thought they might mistake him for the aggressor. But then one of the officers, a young man with a sharp eye, spotted Sophia holding her phone up, recording everything. He shouted, "Stand down! Stand down!" The rogue enforcers, still conscious, were handcuffed, lined up on the front lawn like trash waiting for pickup. Stallone stood in the wreckage of his front hallway, bloodied but upright, breathing hard. Sophia rushed into his arms, burying her face against his chest. He held her tight, tighter than he had ever held anything in his life. Later, as dawn broke over Pacific Palisades, Stallone gave his statement to the police, then to the reporters who had already gathered like sharks smelling blood in the water. He spoke calmly, firmly, laying out the facts, not the anger. He let the evidence speak louder than fists ever could. In the following days, the fallout was swift and brutal. The Willow Ridge HOA leadership was suspended. Multiple members faced charges ranging from conspiracy to kidnapping. Civic Future Strategies issued a hollow press release distancing itself from the fiasco. Mrs. Harrington, the ever-smiling neighbor, found herself doxxed, disbarred from her social circles, and ultimately forced to move. For Stallone and Sophia, life didn't return to normal because normal had been shattered. But something stronger rose from the wreckage: understanding, resilience, a bond forged in fire. Sophia no longer checked the windows before sleeping. Stallone no longer sat awake through the night. They talked more now, listened more. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a day, but brick by brick, it stood again. One evening, as they sat on the porch, the Pacific breeze cool against their skin, Sophia looked at her father and asked, "Are we safe now?" Stallone thought about it for a long moment before answering. "We're never really safe," he said, "but we're ready." She nodded, satisfied. Somewhere beyond the horizon, systems still clicked and whirred, people still plotted in boardrooms and back rooms. But here, in this small piece of the world, a man had stood up, had fought back, had won, not with rage alone, but with proof, with love, and with a refusal to bow. And sometimes that's enough to change everything.